One. So we are now here for me to record my discussion for CM1 and later for the CM2. The subject matter for this semester, so it's my first time handling your section IT, but before I'm handling IT subjects, but right now I'm a full-time professor under HM department. So the subject is all about the contemporary world. So the course description introduces the students to the contemporary world of examining the multifaceted phenomenon of globalization. So I already discussed this before naman sa katong nagmita, but sadly gamay ra ang nakato nga. So eh, to make this discussion, I'll be presenting to you the PowerPoint slide for CM1 for this subject matter. So, ako na po din na-discuss uban. So, ako na lang siya i-brief, ihatag into a summary para makakope, makakatch up ta. So, if you have clarifications for this subject, you can PM me or can even chat sa group chat or sa GC na to. Okay? So, when you say globalization it is something that the connection, the interconnectedness of one place to another. When you say globalize, it is adaptive to what that trend, what is the current practices of one nation to another. So the origin for globalization. But first, globalization is a process of interaction and integration among people, companies, and government in different nations. A process driven by international trade and investment and aided by the information of technology. When you say globalization, it is something that we can contact with our families, our loved ones, or anything in terms of work, business, and so ever. Like for example, by the use of Facebook, by the use of social media, we can easily communicate our loved ones abroad. We can easily communicate with other people abroad compared to before. So, wala pa gyud kaayo na wala pa jud ni siya before. That is why people is having a hard time traveling abroad, traveling for working or studying. But right now, it will be easier because as easy as one click, you can communicate your loved ones na. So, it addressed the barrier of communication gap and what you call homesickness. Maybe now you are traveling from other places away from your family. So the International Monetary Fund or the IMF identified four basic aspects of globalization. First, trade and transaction. Second, capital and investment movement. Third, migration of movement of people. And lastly, the dissemination of knowledge. Okay, let's discuss it one by one. When you say trade and transaction, it is something that deals with business, deals with negotiation from one person in one place to another. Like what we have today, di ba before, mao na trading one ang source of business or for business before. Like the other nationalities will go to the Philippines or they exported their their product or imported their product here in the Philippines, ipadapot sa gawas, so vice versa. So that's what aspect of globalization. We have our product there in the country and they have their product also here in our country. To use the capital and investment movement, it is something that other nationality can already invest here in the Philippines, diba? In business. But at the latest trend, only approximate 40% the non-alien or alien to invest here in the Philippines. Like what about, kung for example, like company, tag-iya si American or tag-iya si Hong kanang Chinese, dili siya ka-own 100% sa company. They can only acquired to the extent up to 40%. What will happen is they will marry a Filipina or marry a Filipino para makatukod na sila og negosyo dito sa Pilipinas. Okay, only Filipino can establish or can create business 100% nga sa ilahag yun. Migration of movement of people. When I say migration, it's something that people move from one place to another. They either be an immigrant or they live there for real or depende na sa reason. So people, labi na, many people wanted, even I myself, diba? Wala na ando na ito po yung Canada, Switzerland, Australia, America, Singapore. We wanted there because the benefits that we will receive is better than here in the Philippines. We are well compensated. Di ba? Sa ato adiri gamay ra kaayo, imagine lang ha, people in Thailand, people in Hong Kong, I've asked them, pila ang sweldo sa nag-work sa Jollibee? Yeah, I interviewed Filipino there. Kung ka ang sweldo sa Hong Kong, sa ilang Jollibee nga, kanang what's your order, ng cashier or server, kay 85,000 per month. That's how big it is. Compare here in the Philippines, pila G's or 15, labing dako. Di ba? So, yung anak mo, nung uban mo abroad yun, o migrate yun, for the sake of the family to be given a better life. The dissemination of knowledge, it is an information sending from one place to another. So basically, through social media, we can easily know what happened in Russia and Ukraine, what happened in Leyte today, yung grabe ang baha, what happened in Camotes na submerged ang barge, and etc. So, it is how very important and very powerful technology is nowadays. So Pinzu Zwart and John Luigi Zanen argue that networks of trade established after a voyage of Columbus and the Gama of the late 15th century had a transported effect of inaugurating the first era of globalization. So the both of them discussed or tackled the first trading system happened in the country. The first system happened in the country is also the first day that globalization takes place. Why man, sir? Because there is an exchange of information, there's an exchange of product from one place to another. Di ba? Kung exchange nilang product sa gawa sa ato, exchange mo dito. So what, that's what called bartering. Mag-barter kang product sa uno, pamuti kwarta. So mo na siya, ni-establish ang globalization. So John R. Schulte, the professor in politics and international studies at England, so na five iyang definition of globalization. First, globalization as internationalization. It is simply an adjective to describe cross-border relationship between countries. Internalization, it is something that Philippines is connected to China, Philippines to Singapore. So internalization. When you say internalization, it's within country to countries. Then globalization as liberalization, a process of removing government imposed restriction and movement between countries in order to create an open borderless world economy. So naman may mga laws that other nationalities can send or even can post or can sell their products here in the Philippines without a strict border from the government. The next, a universalization. Globalization as universalization is a process of spreading various objects and experience to people all corner of the earth. So it is something that sharing of experience. My experience when you travel there, your experience in the Philippines, ang taga Singapore, ilang isto to ilang experience in Singapore. So an exchange of culture and character. Then, globalization as westernization and modernization, whereby social structure of modernity, capitalism, rationalism, industrialism, bureaucracy, etc., are spread the world over. The commitment instruction of pre-existing culture and local determination in the process. So globalization at deteriorization, the configuration of geography, so that the social space is no longer wholly mapped in terms of territorial places. So territorial distances at territorial borders. So respect of borders, so boundary, na ali, na gate. Nagdiara ko to ang China, diara ko to ang Philippines, diara ko to ang Cebu. So yan na. So what's it called? Territorialization. So globalization working definition. It usually refers to the integration of national market to wider global markets signified by the increase of free trade. So, the best scholarly description of globalization provided by Manfred Stier, the expansion of intensification of social relationship and consensus across the world time. Expansion refers to both creation of new social network and the multiplication of existing connection and cut across traditional political, economic, social, and geographical boundaries. You say expansion, it is something that you cut, you move to a place to enrich, to enhance the number of people, yun ana na siya expansion. So kung pa padakan ang balay. So padakan ang territory. Ana. So intensification refers to the expansion, stretching, acceleration of these network. Not only global expansion or multiplying, but also becoming more closely knit to provide their reach. Then example of globalization, cultural globalization, economic globalization, automotive industry globalization, technological, food, industry, banking, and diplomatic globalization. So, so your critical thinking that you'll be answering. So, maoni, you look around to your room, list down the five same things that locally or internationally made. So, use the table format to answer the question. So, the question is there need for us to embrace international product? What are the benefits of the globalization to you or your room based on the product you listed? So, you answer this one ha sa critical thinking. So, same thing ako na nata instruction nga sa Google form mo mag-answer. I'll be finalizing things para maka-answer na mo. Okay? Same thing as sa CM2. So, history of globalization. The need of a constantly expanding market for its product chases the bourgeoisie again. So over the whole surface of the globe, according to Karl Marx. So according to Gurgitzer and Paul D, there are four origins of globalization according to perspective, cycles, hardwired, phases, and events. So when you say hardwired, it focuses on the aspect of globalization related to the urge for better life or trade, honestly, ang una. In order for them to survive, there should be trading exist way back time. So cycles. It's not the only difficult to view or to find single points of origin, but the fourth is largely irrelevant since there have long been cycles of utmost importance, not any particular phase or origin. Then phases. So na yung mga kinds of phases, the Eurasian phase, Eurasian, Oriental Eurasian, and Oriental phase 2. So you read that one, the different kind of phases. So events. So a fourth view is instead of cycles or great phases, one point of more specific events that are seen as the origin of globalization give us good sense of history. In fact, there are many possible points of origin of globalization. Some of where are Romans, the spread of or the Christianity, spread of Christianity. So lain-lain ng event through that we come up to what we call it today. So, Thomas Friedman divided the history of globalization into three periods. So, actually, globalization 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. And each of these stages or phases or period has different or have different things occurs. So, lain-lain. So, 1.0 discussed this occurred from 1942, 1492 until 1800s. The word shrank from the size, large to size the medium. So 2.0 occurred in 1800s to 2000, interrupted by only two world wars. So dynamic. So every kuan kay naay panghitabo that causes things to change. The 3.0 current era. What will happen to the convergence of personal computer? So evolution of computer, di ba? You have noticed that technology is promptly, abruptly changed one place to another. Then globalization ages, the archaic globalization. So existing during the Hellenistic age, when commercialized urban centers were focused on one range that stretched from India to Spain, the cities as Alexandria, Athens, and Antioch. as its center. So na yung mga things na happened in different countries which also affected sa atua. So ano mag-discuss mo tayo sa Pilipinas because we're talking about the history. What happens today is because of the past that we had. So the Islamic Golden Ages, as an important early stage of globalization where Jewish and Muslim traders, traders and explorers established a sustained economy across the world. So globalization ages, modern globalization. In this period was decisively shaped by 19th century of imperialism. So globalization ages. So the inhabitant of London could order the telephone shipping, these morning tea, the various products of the whole earth, and reasonably expect their early delivery upon doorstep. So this time, you'll be answering your creating. So create a product, be it any form, drawing, painting, or Photoshop picture that can use globally this time of pandemic. Explain the paragraph, use the use of product and its unique details. So same thing, that's the end of the discussion for CM1. So what you need to do is you answer the assessment na after I'll be sending the link later. Okay? You transfer all your answer, whether nakasabit mo video, kung hangyo lang, i-transfer lang sa Google Form. Okay? Did I make myself clear? Okay. So, thank you and wait for the CM2.